Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Allan Laboucan with the Rocks and Stocks News Show. I've got a great friend of our show in Ewan Downey joining us today to talk about the recent results that they had that are quite spectacular in a brand new package of rock that they've made a new discovery, and it's 45.4 meters of gold over 17.5 meters.
Grams of gold.
That's pretty spectacular stuff, Ewan.
Yeah, it was something that caught us a bit by surprise. It was logged as a sulfide zone. The hole was drilled to actually drill the blackjack deposits. We're doing directional drilling. We hit the blackjack deposits. That was kind of the highlight of the hole. But then when the assays came back, we had all this high-grade gold before blackjack. So we went back to the core and had a look and ended up finding some visible gold. And it's an entirely new style of mineralization for the Ruby Hill property. So this property just keeps giving and giving. It's been pretty remarkable since we started up our program a year and a half ago.
You know, Ewan, I've been in this business for 30 years and I've seen a lot of stuff. And I've heard a lot of promotion about target-rich projects. I've never in my career seen a discovery-rich project.
Yeah, I believe this makes 7 new discoveries in 14 months since we started our generative exploration program. We've been drilling 3 of those zones out actively, or 4 of those discoveries out actively to bring them to resource. And this is one that we haven't really followed up yet, but we definitely intend to, along with the 428 zone where we hit approximately just over 12 grams per ton over 10.7 meters. We haven't followed that discovery up either. So some of these gold discoveries we have will be followed up starting probably later here in the second half and into next year. But it's a remarkable property. There's skarn polymetallic zinc-rich mineralization underneath the pit. There's also right beside that Carlin type high-grade gold. Immediately south of that is high-grade polymetallic carbonate replacement, or CRD mineralization. And they all occur within an area of about 800 meters by 800 meters. So it's pretty remarkable. You drill through one zone and you hit another. There's also Carlin type mineralization below the blackjack zone. It's pretty interesting, and we do believe it is really a flagship property for the company.
And you know, you're not hitting, bonanza grades over a half a meter kind of stuff. 17 meters of 45 grams. And that was kind of almost accidental because you were actually drilling for the blackjack, right?
Yeah, exactly. We drilled through, we came from the intrusive side. It's really a part of the property that's seen very little previous drilling because it was always deemed that the mineralization's outside the intrusive. So to hit the blackjack deposit on the pit with directional drilling, we're collaring in an area that has no drilling. And as we've been doing the directional drilling, we've been drilling through the intrusive, and we're definitely seeing elevated sulfides. So whether it's a high sulfidation, intermediate sulfidation, or some side of intrusive related sulfide mineralization, it's new for the property, and the target horizon is almost wide open for exploration. After we got these assays, went and looked at some historic, went through the historic core or the historic drill logs, and we found that about 500 meters to the south, Homestake drilled a hole that they hit over 170 meters of gold mineralization. It was all sort of sub 1 gram or up to 1 to 2 grams at the highest, but over a huge interval and ended in gold mineralization. That hole was drilled entirely in the intrusive. It didn't drill through the contact. Where we saw the better mineralization was right on the contact. So it's definitely something that points us in the direction that there could be additional opportunity along this intrusive for a sizable deposit. We also just got the permits or the approvals to now do the extra interference or ground interference onto the BLM grounds here. And with that ability to construct another 70 drill pads on the property, we definitely will be in a position where we can start following up this target And as soon as the new roads and those drill pads are constructed, we will be following it up, because you don't hit 45 grams over 17 meters every day.
And what I noticed when I looked at the cross section is that's really close proximity to the contact. I think they go this way or this way. The contact between two rock packages. And as you just explained, the historical hole was probably maybe too far from that contact. I would imagine the contact is what you want to get after.
Yeah, proximal or along that contact, there's a pretty major fault structure called the East Archimedes Fault. So if you recall, where the Ruby Deeps deposit is on the west side of the Archimedes pit, the Holly Fault, which goes all the way down to where FAD is in the historic Ruby Hill mine, is really being a real structure, a big structure that you find all kinds of historic mines and new mineralization along. The East Archimedes Fault's on the east side of the Archimedes pit, up against the intrusive as it comes down, but it's entirely under alluvium. So until Homestake discovered the Archimedes open pit deposit and then Barrick mined it, the project was, that part of the property had been almost entirely overlooked. So that's where a big opportunity we think is that there's a parallel major fault structure under the alluvial cover that could run for 4 or 5 kilometers with a handful of holes ever testing that structure. And we've recently discovered CRD mineralization in the East Hilltop area close to that fault. And we discovered the additional skarn mineralization with, I think we hit almost 40 meters of over 12% zinc up against or close to that fault structure as well. And so we're finding a lot of high-grade mineralization along that fault. We know that the Lower Jack, which is a Carlin deposit underneath Blackjack, is a Carlin-style mineralization that's pretty close to where we interpret that fault going through. And recent drilling, where we're waiting on assays, we've been hitting more Carlin-type mineralization up to the north, kind of in between Blackjack and the intrusive. So we're definitely finding a lot of mineralization running along this structure that's, like I said, only seen a handful of drill holes. So it opens up a whole new, very large exploration target for us.
Yeah, I noticed that Lower Jack is really close to the contact of the two rock packages as well. So, and you're getting some juicy numbers down there. So there's something going on right along that contact.
Yeah, the Lower Jack zone has probably about a dozen holes into it, very widespread because it was drilled from the bottom of the pit when Homestake and Barrick had the property. And because of the pit slide, which resulted in them selling it, we can't go in that area to drill it. So it's a really difficult target for us to pursue. But once we get the approvals to go underground and build the underground infrastructure, we'll be able to drill it off in detail, multiple horizons from the underground working. So it'll give us a great platform to delineate, hopefully, Carlin gold, sulfide, intrusive gold, and CRD and skarn mineralization all in one little area.
It's almost like you're going to have to decide which way you're going to go, left, right, north, south.
Well, the plan is to convert the plant at Ruby Hill likely to a flotation plant. So the biggest production we expect to come from Ruby Hill is actually from the base metals or the polymetallic deposits. The refractory gold that we see in Lower Jack and has been pretty significantly delineated in the Ruby Deeps and 426 deposits will be trucked up to ultimately be trucked up to our autoclave. But that mineralization is really meant to be a filler. The primary deposits for the autoclave are Granite Creek and Cove. So the gold mineralization we see here is mainly meant to be like the third of our, like the
nice filler, nice filler there, amigo.
Yeah, it's a nice filler, but and we need to do metallurgy. Obviously, if we get a few more holes into this, what we call the Taiki discovery, assuming we get some more holes and we start to delineate that it could be a zone, then we'll have to do the metallurgical work to see how you'd process it, because potentially it's not refractory. So then we might need another processing facility that would go after non-refractory sulfide ore. So it's, you know, Hollywood problems, as they say, but it's pretty good opportunity to have a very sizable mine mining gold and base metals from the same property.
And Ewan, I've had some questions from some people online. They're really curious about how things are going with the CRD targets. I see there's a bunch of drill pads lined up. Was that part and parcel of you getting the permit so that you could build all the pads and the connections to everything so that you can go after that CRD in a big way?
Yeah, the two main zones, which we call the upper hilltop, which is the original discovery of CRD, or the second discovery of CRD, but the closer to surface one, we were limited in where we could drill from. So we were essentially drilling from two pads in kind of an oblique angle. So it's a very difficult zone or discovery to drill off because of our limited land disturbance that was previously permitted to pursue in exploration. So as soon as we hit that CRD mineralization, we immediately submitted for approvals to expand our program onto the BLM, or the Bureau of Land Management grounds to the south, which Barrick didn't do. And we now have those approvals. Also, the East Hilltop area, we've been drilling sort of due east to hit both the CRD and the skarn mineralization we discovered there. But we have been in the last few months sort of from the three drill pads that we have usable for those two zones. We've essentially maximized how much we could drill. So we haven't been doing much drilling. A few holes in the east, and we will be releasing those in the probably about Beaver Creek is when you'll hear about Hilltop next. So that zone, now that we have the extra disturbance, we're going to construct the road into that area, put in the drill pads to continue drilling off the upper hilltop, which had the spectacular grades. And then it'll put us in a good position to drill off both the CRD and the skarn in East Hilltop. So it'll allow us to accelerate, hopefully, our expansion, because the zones are open, especially East Hilltop is wide open, to continue expanding those mineralized zones. But we have slowed down on that. And that's why we drilled these targets. We're drilling blackjack with directional drilling, is because we've been waiting for these approvals so that we can make these disturbance. So now that we have that, you should see a big ramp up in the drill program on the CRDs along that hilltop fault structure.
I've also had a question about from some armchair explorationists asking, why is Ewan all over the place on this property? Why doesn't he focus in on one of something? And you got a pretty nice Hollywood problem there, Ewan.
Well, the reason for that is because our longer term plan, our 3 to 5 year plan, is to start our autoclave up. And to start up that autoclave, we need the 3 deposits to fill it. Ruby Hill is, as I said, the number 3 of those. So it's kind of the filler of the 3. Well, the Granite Creek, in terms of the Carlin type gold mineralization, Granite Creek and Cove are higher grades. So we're definitely, and they're closer to it, so less trucking costs. So definitely want to maximize how much material we mine out of those to go in the autoclave, but we don't think we'll fill the autoclave with those. So we are going to need some of the Ruby Hill, Ruby Deeps mineralization for going into.
Actually, that question is related to Ruby Hill, not your other projects.
Yeah, but that's why we're doing the gold exploration at Ruby Hill. The CRD mineralization is actually being pursued more aggressively there right now for the ultimate, what we hope will be the changeover of the existing plant from a vat leach gold plant to a base metal plant. And in order to start that, we expect to be blending both skarn and CRD mineralization together to go through the mill. So for the armchair quarterback is, we need to drill out those 2 zones, get a good idea of how big those could be. And
you're not going to get upset about accidentally finding 45 grams over 17 meters, right?
Yeah, you'd hope not. But so we're trying not to get distracted by this discovery. We're trying to stay on the program to get Blackjack to resource, get Hilltop to resource, get FAD to resource, so we could start looking at how the metallurgy works, how we would blend them to get maximum recoveries, and then initiate the changeover of that plant. So in order to make that decision of how big the mill might be, how many tons per day, what the blend will be, we need to drill out the multiple deposits and just know exactly what we have where. So I think we're pretty focused on what we're doing. It's just drilling some new areas. And as you do that, sometimes you get lucky and hit something like Taish, or Taiki is actually how you pronounce it. And we need to do some more drilling, because with those kind of grades, that could be a real game changer for this project.
You know, Ewan, one thing that you and I have been around the block a long time. You've been a sponsor of my shows since the Wolfton days, which you sold, and then you did Premier, which you sold, and now you do an i-80. And one thing I've always noticed about you, Ewan, is that you're very good at acquiring projects and then advancing those projects with the drilling. You did that very well at the Cove McCoy. You've also done that very well at Granite Creek, but in all honesty, this thing at Ruby Hill must be just blowing you away with what you're doing with your drilling.
Yeah, if we had an endless budget, we definitely have a lot more drills going, but we're trying to be as prudent as possible, stick to what our programs are as much as possible. But yeah, the 3 projects we've acquired are all turning fantastic results. We just started up an underground and surface drill program again on the South Pacific Zone, because we want to upgrade it to M&I resource for an ultimate feasibility study. And if you remember, that's what all the buzz was in our exploration about a year and a half ago, was look how good South Pacific is. So we drilled it out in fairly wide space drilling. So when we started doing the resource work, it would have all qualified as so-called inferred resources. You can't use that for a feasibility. So we had to start up drilling there again, and definitely we're liking what we're seeing in that program again.
It stays open as you go to the north, higher grade as you go deeper, and there's plenty of room for that. You're sitting beside a 25 million ounce gold deposit there.
Yeah, it's a 10, 12 gram. We consistently get 10 to 15 gram material at the South Pacific Zone and at OG. The first 2 levels that we mined out of the OG zone were 14 and over 11 grams per ton. So really good grades for underground mining. And now it's just getting additional drilling done so we can increase our reserves, so to speak, in order to move forward with the feasibility study and ultimately a full production decision for the property.
Ewan, you've been very kind with your time. I know I got you on a tight schedule today. I went over a little bit, but I just can't help myself because, you guys just keep adding value on every project.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that our exploration success, other than last year, the second half of last year, we found the hilltop zones. We definitely really outperformed our peers. But going into the end of the year and early this year, our biggest shareholder, Equinox Gold, sold a block of their stock, and it was advertised. So it really knocked our share price down starting late last year and into early this year, from over $4 to ultimately went down into the 210, 220 range. We recovered quite nicely, and Waterton sold stock. So we've been dealing with a few of our we bought the projects from Waterton, and part of the consideration were shares. So they're not a long-term holder, and every now and then they sell blocks, and it seems to always put a lid on us. But once that block is out of the way, we just cleared their most recent block this week. It should allow us to outperform, we think, here in the second half, as we expect to have significant success from drilling at Granite Creek, Cove, and Ruby Hill for the rest of this year.
So you kind of have big blocks out of your way, and lots of news to talk about.
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks, Ewan. Let me close it off.
Okay, thanks for having me again, Al.
There you go, folks. I-80 Gold is just keeps on delivering with the Truth Machine, adding tremendous value at the Cove project, at the Granite Creek project, and Ruby Hill is just remarkable to me, and I think to the team at I-80. Different styles of mineralization. They all seem to be high grade. This sounds like a massively powerful mineralizing system with multiple styles of mineralization. I no wonder it's quickly become the key asset, but that puts Granite Creek at second, and Granite Creek is pretty incredible. And then you got Cove at third, which is very high grade. So I've said before, I think that I-80 is growing itself into a multi-billion-dollar company. And every news release gives me more confidence that that's what's going to happen. And this recent selling that Ewan talked about with big blocks has kind of created a tremendous opportunity for investors out there that can see the vision of the long term and the short term, for that matter, of I-80 Gold. So as always, do your homework, speak with your financial advisors, and have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.